All right, what about dividing by 0? Okay. Now you see in this example that 0 is the divisor, right? And whatever number we get here, that would be the dividend. So you'll be using D&E on the homework, but this is undefined. Now, when we say undefined, mathematically, this means that, and this is hard for math people to admit, by the way, but this is just saying that mathematically speaking, we can't actually quantify the number or value that would work here. All right, and hopefully the fact family for this one would make sense, because A is the dividend, so that would be the product of the related multiplication example. So it's A, right? And then your two factors would be 0, and then, I don't know, that D&E, some undefined value, right? Well, there's nothing that for now, that I can multiply 0 by to get a value out of, right? And so hopefully this makes sense. In fact, mathematically, we would say, well, I would think about this in large numbers. So 0, if I multiplied it by something gigantic, even bigger than like trillions or quadrillions, if there is such a thing, or Google's, maybe that's more familiar. I could multiply it by a value so big, even infinity, in fact, and I couldn't get an A value on that. So it just, right now, especially where we're dealing with arithmetic, we just say it doesn't exist. And that's what D&E stands for, does not exist. Now I'm going to show this part. If this is really confusing, just ignore this garbage, all right? So if we were to set this up using long division, right? A, let's say it doesn't matter what the value of A is. But if I said A, this would be A divided by 0, right? I'm just going to use a number, any number. I could even use 1 on this. So that would read 1 divided by 0, right? And say, this question is really asking, how many times does 0 go into once? And you could say once, and be like, well, one isn't sufficient enough. You could say 2 even. And you could go to infinity, and it still would not be enough. So that's why we say it does not exist. But again, that's only when 0 is the divisor. So here's some of those types of examples. If we see it in this fraction type notation here at the top, 3 divided by 0, yeah, we're just going to put D&E. In the past, I wanted to say that they used to say no solution or something like that, but D&E is good, does not exist. And yeah, it doesn't matter if it's written like this as well. 90 is your divisor, 0 is your dividend. As soon as you see 0 as a dividend, it's a D&E case. All right, so 0 does have its properties with multiplication, right? We know anything multiplied by 0 is just 0. And then we said, well, 0, if you make it a divisor, just like we saw in that example, these two examples, then you get a D&E. But if 0 is your dividend, then the quotient is just 0.